This is the video and live streaming show. I'm John Lacey and this is Sam Proof. And today we're talking all about content planning. How do you plan your content? How does it relate to your goals? Do you have a strategy? And additionally, what would you like to hear us talk about on this show in 2023? We're going out live to all of the places, so let us know where you're watching from in the chat and what your content plan might look like for this year. Hi, Sam.
Hey John, how's it going?
Pretty good. We're obviously in the new year now, 2023, so we're all excited for all of the things. And I thought it might be a good opportunity to talk about, actually planning some content and having a bit of strategy around that. So, I guess before we get stuck into the things that we want to talk about, it might be worthwhile thinking about our goals. What do you think is sort of worth keeping in mind when it comes to actually creating goals as a content creator?
Sure. I think we've touched on this in the past, and the real thing that I like to put out there when we talk about goals to people is that these are things that you can control. This You're not looking for creating a goal that is completely arbitrary and about numbers and things like that. Like, oh, I want to hit 16,000 followers or, a million views. Those are not really controllable goals unless you're just like, I'm going to create 16,000 fake accounts. What's the point, So when we talk about goals, I want people to think in terms of like, what are things I can control and contribute to? So things along the lines of, we're doing this show. I want to do this show weekly. From this show, I want to be able to create 2 blogs, 3 shorts, 2 long form videos, things like that. Those are the kind of goals we're looking at.
So I guess really thinking in terms of both what you have influence over and maybe sort of clarifying some of those deliverables.
Yeah. And really the numbers are the result of those goals working out, right?
Yeah, so I guess you don't necessarily want a goal that's like I will get 10,000 subscribers in January. So that might be something that you need to reconsider a little bit.
For sure.
So I guess once we've articulated our goals, and I might get you to, we'll both do this, but I'll ask you in a second, to reflect a little bit on our goals, both for this program, but also things that we're doing outside of this show.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, you spoke about those deliverables. I'm trying to do 2 live streams a week, so we do this show on Saturday my time. I realize it's Friday due to the wonder of time zones for you, but also do my coffee and content show on Sundays, my time again. And I guess, in some ways I guess the thing that I've realized over the last few weeks is that both shows sort of cover very similar topics. And I was thinking a little bit, obviously one is the 2 of us and one of them is just me by myself.
Right.
But I guess the other thing I was trying to keep in mind is just that, how can I actually differentiate those? And I think for coffee and content, I'm really going to try and do more software tutorials, but just do them in a live format. But I guess, even more broadly speaking, I want to do, and again, let's focus on the deliverables part of this at the moment. And I guess it can be so tempting sometimes to go, I will do, 1,000 different things all at once.
Yes.
And we've got to keep these things realistic and make sure it's achievable for us. But I want to do the 2 live shows. I'm really hoping to be able to release maybe 2 or 3 shorts a week. I'm hoping I'll be able to batch those a little bit in future and have them ready to go because I'm really feeling the power of that. And I also want to sort of make sure that that the content is reflected on my website. And that does require a little bit of extra work for me to do it in the way that I'm happy to do it. But I think it's really important, and I guess for me at the moment, the goals are very much about personal branding and wanting to be known as an authority in this video and live streaming content creation space.
Mhm.
So, everything is around that. And I do sort of prioritize, the professional platform of LinkedIn over almost everything, but I am also looking to double down on YouTube as well. So I realize you've got a lot of different projects and things going on. But like, what where are you hoping to put your focus in this new year?
Yeah, well, I'm actually like currently analyzing all of that right now. So I don't know that I have a decisive answer on this, a definitive answer, but obviously with the success of the kitten cam, I want to designate a majority of my time to that and to figuring out what the next steps for that are. We have a lot of events that we do every year. And I feel like in this past year, I have established the routine of these are the events. So now it's kind of creating a through line into those different things. And these are both fundraising elements of the kitten cam and sort of interactive integrations with the chat. So these are sort of gamified fundraising things, and I want to create sort of a world behind all of this that completes them. So that is a very sort of metaphysical goal that's out there, but within that, it's focusing down on raising donations for fostering kittens and getting more cats fostered and adopted this year. Last year we had what is, since we began, the slowest year we've had, 17 cats, and that's in part due to just the wave of unfortunalities by the pandemic. I may have made up a word there, but that is what it is. On the personal side, with Sam Proof and what we're doing together, I've kind of established in my hypothetical pretty much my goals for my side of this show. That's relatively accurate. 2 blogs and 3 shorts and maybe 2 long form per week out of this content, hopefully. Um, Beyond all of that, I long ago had an interactive board game show called Season Z, which is a zombicide show. I want to bring that back and see what I can do to make that both fun and profitable. So those are all my goals, which feels like a lot after you just
It
said not to do too much.
And I must admit, I've been thinking all this week that you tell me every day, or like every time we talk, not to spread yourself too thin on all the platforms. I kind of feel like you might be spreading yourself too thin on so many different projects. But I
Right.
mean, I love the variety of it, and you are a bit of a renaissance man. Speaking of which, we do have some comments here. So Admiral a Six Killer. I
Yep.
could do so much more with gaming on Star Trek Online with their demo record. I just need more time. No HUD, no floating scores, just raw battles. And also, that's one of your bots. We don't need to
That's
worry
a
about
bot.
that. And again, but I'm working on music again. Just recorded a new track for a singer from way back in the 90s that tried out for a band I was in. So,
Nice.
this, I guess in some ways, and it's funny, even in my day job, I have a manager who is really, really wonderful, really lovely, and he tells us, you people can do anything you want, and I'm like, let me just stop you there. We can do anything we want within sort of some, constraints with time and energy and resources. So again, I don't know. I always feel like the grumpy old reasonable person saying these sorts of things, but just keep in mind what might actually be possible. So again, let's and yes, Sam's just saying music is always a good goal to have, and
Yeah.
it absolutely is. So let's head on to our next question. So I guess, in some ways we want to think about how, how our goals as creators, and again, keeping in mind that, you may want to think more about the things that you have influence over, but like, how can your content actually help you meet those goals? And I think in some regards, it can be so tempting to want to ride every new trend.
Oh
But
yeah.
if that isn't sort of playing into your goals, if that isn't establishing you as the expert, if that isn't selling your service or product, it can, I think in some ways, if there is a little bit of overlap there, you can potentially think about how you want to use those just to generate some more awareness. But again, what is that thing doing for the broader goal of your content creation? And again, like I guess Sam specifically, for Cute Avalanche for the kitten cam that you mentioned earlier, the goals are very, very obvious and explicit. So, and I know that you do a number of different sort of themed fundraising events throughout the year. So maybe if you could speak to those a little bit, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, coming up in early February, we're going to be doing our Super Bowl, which is it's a 1 day event to raise funds for kitten season. Every year, kitten season is uh, a big time of year where all the cats in Los Angeles, well, and around the world, give birth and all of that sort of stuff. So we do this Super Bowl to raise money to get ready for that. And as far as making content related to that, it's an all day event, but we do focus down on about a 1 to 2 hour chunk of time where we deck the room out. The room's decked out all day, decorated, and I go in as an announcer, and we do sort of a play by play, and it's all the scores are driven by donation. And here's the garbage truck, awesome. Um, and yeah, from that, the beauty of it is really beyond just the donations and the love and all that, is that there's so many cute moments that do happen, that being a Twitch stream, our own audience has the ability to create clips, um, and we can take those clips and repurpose them. So we get about 20 to 30 clips that are UGC in essence, even though it is our own content, somebody else is clipping it for us. And that gives you that sense of like, this is something people thought was good. Clearly, I should be using this. Occasionally, you get this is something where somebody was like, "What does that do?"
And I mean, obviously, I don't think it's a hard sell to get people excited about cute kittens. But it is great that they're able to help you identify those moments that clearly captured their imagination and their hearts a little bit. And as you say, once they're clipped out, you can sort of take them and use them elsewhere and really establish. Because I guess the other thing too is you're not always watching the kitten cam, are you? So,
That's
there
correct.
could be things that that happen that could be really, really meaningful and really cute and adorable. So it is great that you have that functionality built in.
Yeah.
Um, that's a great example. I guess for me, the thing, and it's one of those things that like I sort of jokingly suggested you were a bit of a Renaissance man, which I'm sure you are. But I think for me, I really need people to have a really good understanding of who I am and what I'm about. And I think in some ways, I was really self-conscious for the longest time about just showing up and talking about video day in, day out. And I literally I post Monday to Friday on LinkedIn and I really only talk about video and live streaming and content creation and nothing else. And I think at first I was actually quite self-conscious about doing that, but I think now when people do have these video questions, they do seek me out, and I think it's just because of that repetition. So
Mhm.
I guess that's kind of what I want to do. I am sort of exploring the possibility of, maybe generating some income. I mean, I've been kind of reluctant to do that with my online stuff because it
Mhm.
really it started as a passion for me. But I am sort of curious, if I do start making videos about how to use Restream Studio, and other software packages, if I do have some affiliate links and incorporate those a little bit more. So
Sure.
those are certainly things that I'm looking at. Um, let's move on to our next section. So, how do we actually generate ideas? And I guess we'll talk about this question, but I also want to talk about maybe how we rule some of these ideas out because you can't do all of the things. But so, Sam, do you have any thoughts on how you might generate the kinds of things that you want to cover during this year?
Sure. There's a few methods that I've actually seen suggested recently, aside from just being like, "What can I talk about?" Um, there is a website called, I believe it's Ask the Public, and you can go there and put in a just a keyword or a key phrase, and it will spit back to you, these are common things that are searched for, and it will even prioritize those by like sort of the volume of searches. Google Trends has a similar sort of grading system of like, this is keywords that are being searched for. So I think that's a great place to start. Ask the Public will literally spit back some questions. Like if you go in and be like cats, it'll be like, what kind of food should I feed my cat? Things like that. And I'm like, that's great. And you can see this is high volume, this is low volume. Go from there. Another more recent um, entry into this sort of brainstorming is this whole AI explosion. You can go over to Chat GPT and literally type in, can you give me 10 ideas for blogs about OBS? And it'll be like, here you go, here's 10 ideas. Whether or not those are as graded is probably not so much, but it is 10 ideas and they're solid.
Sure. And I guess, there are I I'm going to share my screen because and again, we'd love to hear from the people watching live as to what they want us to cover later on. But we literally just put this Google Doc together, and I've rather unimaginatively called it topics. But again, we kind of wanted to articulate some of the things that we might be interested in, and it's really just a bit of a brain dump. So we're looking at things like content formats, live streaming specifically, destinations for live streaming, hardware, video production, video editing, hosting and storage, community building and engagement, content repurposing, which is something I'm really obsessed with, video live streaming by use case. So I thought that was a really interesting one that we could explore. So,
Yeah.
are there people in small business? How might they use live streaming? And is that different to maybe someone that's using it for a charity or a
Yeah.
professional, a personal branding outfit? And of course, we've got the monetization there as well. Um, Yep, cool. Yeah, so again, like we just got our ideas down on this document to sort of generate some things. I guess it's probably worth thinking about what you want to be known for and what you don't want to be known for. And there's probably a little bit of tension between me and the entire rest of the world right now because everyone is so obsessed with these AI tools and I just hate
Yeah.
them. It makes me so sad as a creator and an author that
Sure.
if you don't care enough to even write the damn thing yourself, I'm really not interested in reading it. And that it's quite a visceral reaction on my behalf. And it's just I've literally been in jobs where you know, people have been like, write this amazing article and make sure it's perfectly SEO'd and the greatest thing in the world, but don't spend too much time on it. And I just know that person in particular would be so
Right.
happy to fire everybody that works for them and just outsource to AI. I'm not into it. I don't like it. I guess authorship is really important to me, and I do like to use my own words and my own personal voice. And I've done that for like honestly 20, 30 years at this point in time. So I'm very invested in that. But like I say, it's probably worthwhile thinking about things that you don't want to be known for. And, I try not to be too grumpy on social media. I try to only amplify things that I believe in and that I think are worth exploring. I do also have, private channels where I just rant and to my friends, but it's probably worth exploring. And again, which of these are getting back to your broader goals as a content creator. So we just have a look at some of these chat messages because
Yeah.
Admiral Six Killer is giving us all kinds of exciting things to check out. So he, if you have a large following, it is possible to use your popularity to generate income through creating a media network to sell time slots for anyone wanting to display their content. It's a great point.
Sure. Sure.
Uh,
I mean, I definitely think we'll hit on monetization for an entire show at some point, but you don't even have to have that large a following to start making money.
and I guess that's the thing. If it is a niched if it is a niched following, if you have a very specific topic that you're covering and you've got something that's just perfect for your audience, then, you
Yeah.
don't necessarily need to sell 3 million of those things to make it
Right.
worthwhile in a financial sense.
Mhm.
So Admiral also writes, VI Loud is a service you can do that with. And additionally, create a web TV network and sell time slots for live streaming player with scheduled shows. So those are some great suggestions there. So I guess that was in terms of generating ideas. So I think honestly, and I'm not. I used to be somebody that would write things down on paper a lot,
Mhm.
but I don't do that anymore. Although I did actually get a whiteboard recently, so I think really just dumping those things out again. You can sort of do a bit of research, see what other people in your niche are looking at. Use services like Ask the Public that Sam mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
and just plan it out in that regard. So I guess once you've thought about what the things are that you might cover, we want to think about actually scheduling those because, and I've spoken about this previously, but it can be so tempting to just show up on the day and talk about whatever you feel like. But I think
Right.
there are a few opportunities in terms of getting things set up earlier in time. One, you can let people know about the next thing you're covering after that session. You can sort of plan your video thumbnails if you're doing video
Yeah.
live streaming. You can actually think about promoting that ahead of time. So if I've got a session on a Saturday and I know it's going to be about editing in Camtasia, I might actually tease out some content during the week about that particular session or about Camtasia
Definitely.
more generally. There are all kinds of opportunities to do that sort of thing. Obviously, Sam, you've used a lot of holiday themed type things for Cute Avalanche specifically.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on using a content calendar?
Um, for Cute Avalanche specifically, yeah, my content calendar is almost completely based around holidays, but with my own personal brand and to some extent Cute Avalanche, I do have not so much a content calendar as just a Google sheet, and it's just like it's a very brief sort of weekly like Mondays we're gonna do a feel good post. Tuesdays we're gonna do uh, promoting the chat and some other stuff. That sort of thing. I'm not going to go over every single thing, but yeah, I have a variety of sheets actually. So I have like all of my tweets that I'm possibly going to do and ideas for Instagram and video and stuff like that. And within the video, I have different projects where I do a bunch of let me mute this for a second. I do a lot of Alexa videos. Now everyone else's has gone off and mine hasn't. So I have about 100 of those ideas just jotted down, and they're not exactly dated yet, but it's just here's a workflow.
And I guess I and I'll share this with everybody. Share my screen again. So it's one of those things. I'm sure this would scare a lot of people, but I know Sam is nerdy enough to be able to appreciate a good spreadsheet. So essentially, what I've done, we've actually planned out, sections for the 52 weeks of content for this year. We want to cover the different topics here. We want to think about our notes. We've got the episode numbers. We've got the times, the date essentially in both our time zones. Um, and I guess like the other thing too is like you can be a bit strategic about how you place this out in a way
Mhm.
where if you see it longer term, I because maybe we want to talk about a live streaming destination and we want to talk about one of those per month, then we can think about where it might be. It might be the second or third week of each month. We can actually get into the habit of doing that, and I think more broadly, that is one of the great things about planning the content is that it is actually it is it's about creating expectations for your audience, but it's also about creating habits for yourself. If you know that if it's a Monday and you do a particular thing on a Monday and you need to do it by a specific time, whether you're batching that ahead of time and just scheduling it out with one of the various tools that are out there, or whether you're actually doing that in relatively real time, either way, you kind of know what your deliverables are, and we come back to what are those things that you can actually control, and where can you put your focus. So I mean, I guess the other thing too that sort of jumped out at me creating that particular calendar was just that some months, given that we stream on Friday or Saturday, depending on the time zone, some of those months have an extra week in them this time around. So
Mhm.
that might be a good opportunity to sort of bring out something that we don't normally do in terms of that content. So yeah, that's I just think it's because and I say this as someone who is a fairly habitual person. I kind of need rhythm and I need some habits and some routines to really be
Yeah.
effective. So
I'm a big fan of that sort of repetition that builds a habit like that because it does give you, um, something that you can always point to and be like, Tuesdays are this, and Thursdays are Throwback Friday, Thursdays, whatever it is. But also, I'm a big fan of not having to make choices. So if that is a thing, that's one less choice I have to make.
absolutely. And I think that's, we've spoken about removing friction in the content
Yeah.
creation process recently. And if sometimes, and I guess, different modes of working support different things. So, if I have to sit and think about what my super clever idea is going to be, 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, I could be there for a while before I even hit record. So, if you can go off and sort of be a little bit more strategic and, try to offset some of that cognitive load, I kind of feel like, for me personally, I have a very regimented way of making the videos. And because I know how I'm doing that and how I'm editing them, and I may or may not use the teleprompter to record them, but because I have that system in place, I can focus on the content of the video and not
Mhm.
necessarily the technical aspects around it, and that really does free me up quite dramatically. And I think in some ways, I constantly see these jokes on LinkedIn about, what is a job that people think is easy but is actually really difficult, and content creation being that classic example. There are so many aspects to this, and again, if you can choose the ones that are most important to you and put your energy and focus there, I think you'll really appreciate it in the long term.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing too, like Sam alluded to the fact that that Cute Avalanche is very, very holiday centric. So we do have all kinds of days of some of them are quite funny, some of them are quite ridiculous. But if there is a bit of overlap between what you do and a particular theme day, you can seek out those calendars. They're all over the internet. Um,
Yeah.
National Pizza Day, or I don't
Yeah,
know.
you can search for weird holiday for any day or month or week and come back with 2 to 4 results for what weird holiday fits on there. Um, and there's a bunch of other uh, creators who put out sort of social media calendars that you can plug right into like a Google Calendar or an iCalendar and just get that kind of thing popping up on your calendar for easy access. If you use MetaSuite, they also have some amount of that built into their scheduling thing, so you can see what's coming up in the next week or two. And yeah, those sort of idea generators are all around out there.
Absolutely, and I must admit I hadn't even thought about this until just now. But if we again, I'll share my screen. This is actually something called Promo Republic, and to be really honest with you, I don't use this very often. But it was an app Sumo purchase from a million years ago. So, they've actually not only do they have a number of these days and themes sort of
Mhm.
scheduled out, but they have templates that you can create graphics out of and do things like that. So, I again, I don't, I. I swear I'm trying not to go on about this, but I try not to make your content too computer generated, too
Yeah.
templated. We really want to see and experience you and have a relationship with you as well. But it's not to say that you can't use some of these things as starting points, because you don't necessarily want to completely reinvent the wheel each time. You want to think about what makes sense for you and your audience.
Yeah, I mean, you can use those as concepts and then create it for you make templates that make sense to you and your brand, and then as long as they're unique every time, a unique template.
Okay, so we might let me just check on the chat. Okay. Yep, cool. All right. So again, I might just bring up this because we do really want to hear about the kinds of things that people would like to hear us talk about. And like I say, we've got some ideas here, and maybe we will even just bring this up on the screen and talk about some of these together, and we'll just do it in real time. I think it can be
Sure.
quite useful to. to share your thinking. And it's funny, I kind of feel like in some ways, and this is something I'm guilty of in particular, is, I want to present myself in a really professional way. And that's great, but I think often the magic is in showing behind the scenes as well. So,
Sure.
people don't know how good your setup is until they, I sort of joke about this, my green screen setup. Like there is literally the back of a bookcase and a door behind me, but because I've got the green screen, I have a little bit more flexibility in terms of what I'm able to do. So let's work out loud. Let's have a look at this and let's have a chat about it. And again, if you're watching live in one of the many places we're going out to today, we'd love to hear about what you might be interested in us exploring.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, we have a really good list. I mean, I think we have enough shows for a year and a half with all of these topics. Uh, and I don't think there's any one thing where I'm like, I couldn't talk about that. There's nothing to say there. um, I think knowing who our audience is would help us a lot. So if you are out there, I'd love to know, are you a professional streamer, a small business streamer, a church, a gamer? Are you making YouTube content, Twitch content? That would help us a lot in what content makes the most sense. Um, but I think when we start to approach this, we look at sort of the three or so main topics that people in general will probably be looking for, which I'm going to make some assumptions are going to be growth, interacting with their community, and monetization. That's my guess, is that those are going to be the most popular topics to start with. I think it would be cool to every once in a while do some more technical tutorial type stuff. Like here's like like the OBS plugins episode. I think that's great. Um, but yeah, I also like the idea of once a month taking a real deep dive into a particular software or platform. So maybe the third show that month. So it's not next week, but the week after, we'll take a look at maybe YouTube or Twitch or Restream, something like that. Um,
And
yeah,
I guess the other thing too is that in some regards, and this is certainly reflected in my experience on YouTube, on LinkedIn, I should say, that in some regards there are people out there that know in their heart they want to be a video creator, they want to be a live streamer, but there are lots of people that it just sounds like the most terrible idea in the world and they're just not into it. They don't want to be on camera. So I guess the other thing is I'm trying to think of ways where I can sort of gently bring people into my community. So I often for me the lowest hanging fruit, the earliest point of entry to this subject matter is a lot of us are doing online meetings and video calls.
sure.
And if I can sort of encourage people to, up their game ever so slightly, so they look a little bit more presentable, they're not talking into their headphones, they don't have the camera pointed up their nose, which is honestly, it's ridiculous how many people on serious incomes with very important job descriptions are doing that. It's ridiculous to me, but um, so yeah, I guess that's the other thing. So we want to think in terms of beginner, intermediate, and more advanced topics as well. But again,
Sure.
I guess a lot of this, we talk about knowing our audience. This is only our ninth episode in, so we are still finding those people. But again, if people have questions, if there are specific things you want us to cover, that would be really great to hear. So again, let's check out the chat. So Admiral Six Killer, I do a lot of editing work for Sales Trainer. We display that on our network. Okay, that's awesome. It's funny, we spoke about this, I think, last week. I love editing. Sam is not really into it. If there's ever an
I'm good
opportunity
at
to...
editing. I just don't want to spend 12 hours to make one, like 10 minutes of stuff.
And it's funny because and I teased Sam about this during the week, but he did a live stream where he took one of our recordings and just used the YouTube Shorts, the Shorts functionality in the YouTube app to sort of, ever so slightly tweak it. And I thought it looks kind of ugly. Like I'm not into it, so I went into my editing software, and I admittedly I probably did spend a solid hour putting it together, but I was so happy with it, and it's had so many more views than anything else I've done lately. So. I guess in some ways that's another great example. Like it may be good to explore some of the points where we differ because I think that might be interesting for the audience. Again, you've alluded to the fact you're interested in the AI tools, and I swear I won't keep going on about this, but you know how I feel about those.
It's the new vertical video, John.
And that's another example. Like I had to be dragged kicking and screaming to the vertical video. So we've got another comment here. Adobe under five. Do you live stream to multiple platforms? Yes, we do.
Yes.
I'm going out on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I don't think anyone knows I have a Twitch account, but I'm going out there nonetheless. And again,
Mm-hmm.
Sam is also sharing on other platforms. I won't
Yeah.
make you guess which
That's,
ones they are
that's,
from memory, but we
it's fine.
certainly are going out to various
Yes.
places.
Yeah, and I think that is a show we could do an entire topic on. The benefits of multi-streaming, multicasting, and different services that offer that, and ways to um, communicate with multiple chat audiences because we do have people on, as you said, YouTube and Twitch and LinkedIn, and like some platforms do not have an obvious, a lot of platforms don't have an obvious way of making that known, like, hey, you're not seeing my chat, what's going on. I think Restream's pretty good about giving us the chat from most of the platforms, but I'm not positive.
I guess like in terms of that, they do like if anyone's making a comment anywhere, I will see it in the chat that we've got here. But
Yeah.
I guess the other thing about Restream specifically is it does have it has its own relay bot. So
Yeah.
where it's supported, we can actually see the comments from Facebook show up on YouTube. But I know LinkedIn, you can't send anything to LinkedIn
That's what I
chats
thought.
except
Yeah.
natively. So
Yeah,
again,
I
those
knew.
people might be a little bit left out of the chat, but hopefully we're bringing it up on the screen and talking about it.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think that would be a great entire episode for a show to do as well, since we're doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we as I say, we're using Restream to go out to multiple platforms, and we actually bring in I set these up on my account, and then I share them with Sam, and then he has the ability to share them on his destinations as well. So that's a great point. So another question, or comments rather. So Admiral, Six Killer, I'm bad at chroma keying 720p. I must admit, it's one of those things people always talk about making sure that your green screen is really well lit, and I've
Yeah.
never really had to do much of that. I don't know why. I guess the other thing is I'm sort of cropped within my frame a little bit, and occasionally you might see see that. But I've got a couple of Elgato key lights. I've got a very large window, and I've got honestly a very very cheap green screen behind me. And I guess that is one thing that I'm considering maybe upgrading in my setup is maybe moving to a different green screen. But
Hmm.
and again, there's a follow-up comment about the 1080p. So I need at least 1080p for it to look decent by my standards, but the content our network does is aimed mostly at mobile users. Easier to load and play 720p for most mobile users. And I should say, honestly, the plan I'm on with Restream, we're only doing 720, and I don't. It might be a conversation for another show, but my feeling is most people watching a live stream don't care that much.
Correct.
I know there are some people that are really neurotic about making sure that and I keep hearing the word crispy in relation to this. These young people, I don't understand how they talk, Sam. But anyway, they keep talking about crispy 1080, 1920 by 1080, which is fine. But to be honest, if I can see you, if I can see what you're presenting, if I can hear you, I don't think the average person cares too much about the
Yeah.
quality, except that some of us are sort of amateur audio engineers and we get really neurotic about those sorts of things. I bought this microphone 2 months ago and I'm not loving it. I have to tell you, I'm genuinely considering about going back to one of the other things I've got here, and I've got several mics on my desk. I've got this one, which is the Rode Procaster. I've also got a Rode NT1A, which is a really beautiful condenser microphone, but I was a little bit concerned about the plosives on that one. But again, there are things that you will get hung up on as a creator that most people don't even notice, let alone care about. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
um,
when it comes to things like green screen and just video quality in general, when you're doing a live stream, the viewer is a lot more forgiving as long as your audio is clear and you're actually interacting with that audience. They're going to be a lot more forgiving than, a feature film viewer would be very upset if they can see like the mask of the green screen, or like, oh, the background of that car shot is that's not quite blurry enough, whatever it is. But for when it comes to live streaming, yeah, as long as your audio is good, that's what I found. You're fine. Like,
Absolutely. And Adobe Under 5 says, I believe Facebook users have to give permission for their username to show up using Restream. I think that's actually true of a number of different platforms. There is a URL that we can send people off to formally give that permission. I often see, generic LinkedIn users appear on the platform from time to time. So,
mhm,
again, it's funny because it's very easy for us to send this out to a number of different platforms, but there are a lot of nuances between those
yeah,
platforms. And it's funny, I'm actually making some content about setting up events on Restream specifically. And you kind of add your title, your description, and your thumbnail and specify a time and date. But once you've done that within Restream, it's often a good idea to go to LinkedIn and you can add a longer description. You can actually tag the people that will be presenting on that show as part of that. Like it's its own field within LinkedIn events. On YouTube, you've got options to show the chat replay or not. So as much as we're coming from this one destination, this one sort of piece of software, there's a lot of nuance there. And I guess the other thing too is on Twitter, you only see the title, but you can go in and sort of customize the title, and you can put hashtags, and you can ping people as well there. So again, I like the idea of sharing. If you spend any time creating anything that you think is worthwhile, I think it's important to share it as widely as you can without sort of creating too much additional work for yourself. And I know that's something we've kind of spoken about previously. But again, it's as a content creator, you really have to try a lot of things and just see what works and what gets some traction, and keep refining that process.
yeah. When we talk about multi-streaming and stuff like that, early on with the kitten cam, we we I mean, when we originally started, it was just on Facebook, and then Mob Crush, which is a company that no longer really exists, they offered multi-streaming, and I'd never heard of it before. And somebody I knew started working there, and they approached me, and I was like, "This is great. I'm going to try this." So we were able to go out at that time to uh, Mixer, Twitch, YouTube. Gosh, I don't remember. I don't think Facebook was on there that early, but maybe it was. But at least those three, and it really widened that net. And eventually, we started to see, okay, Mixer really popped off. We started to grow our audience there. Um, and the beauty about Mixer, there was no exclusivity, so it was fine for us to keep restreaming or multicasting. Um, and eventually, Mixer folded, and we went back to just kind of widening the net to see what we wanted. We had been focusing on Mixer, but still streaming. Just that was the majority of where we were putting our effort and our time and our, uh, interactions. And eventually, it moved in the direction of Twitch. We actually got all the requirements to become Twitch affiliates. Twitch does have an exclusivity deal, so we stopped restreaming the Kitten Cam so that we could just focus in on Twitch. But I think there's a lot of data that can be brought in when you are doing something like multicasting to all of these different things. You can see what's working in different places, where your growth is, where you're getting followers, where you're getting chat, possibly where you're getting donations. There's a lot of those that will give you monetization without cutting off the lifeline of that net to multicast. So I think if there's no particular reason for you to be on one platform, like you don't have a stranglehold on you to stay somewhere, do it. spread yourself out, stream wise, not spread yourself thin, spread your net out and see what works. Get that data.
And again, we spoke about creating goals. So, social media is this amazing opportunity to get awareness and to connect with people, but it is also rented land. So, one of the things that I'm certainly been encouraging Sam to do is sort of get his website up and running, and we've been doing a little bit of that in the last week. Also, think about, if you've got a mailing list, think about using that as well, because we see that these platforms can come and go, and Sam's been doing this for since 2005 at least.
Yep.
I'm getting all these notifications lately to say, "Oh, you joined Twitter 15 years ago. Here's your first YouTube video from 15 years ago." So a lot of things happened for me 15 years ago, and it's feeling like a weird cycle. But I digress a little bit there. So again, by all means, think about the opportunity of those platforms, share them where it makes sense to share them, but also try to bring your audience into your world and into the places that you actually own. We know that you can lose accounts. You know that things fall in and out of fashion. We know that people with too much time and money on their hands come in and take over
Yeah.
and do things. But again, we don't want to go down that path too much. Yes, no, don't go there. All right. So yeah, let's just think about where you're sending people, and again, it comes back to those goals, because if you build your entire world on a platform and it goes away for whatever reason, you're really starting from scratch. So,
Yeah.
Adobe Under Five has this great question. So let me just bring it up. So, what software do you use to plan out content creation? I have 3 YouTube channels and use Notion to keep them organized. I guess we're pretty invested. Well, I say we. I'm pretty invested in the Google Drive suite, and we use that to actually share resources like thumbnails and
Yeah.
video files. We are using I'm using Google Docs to generate some ideas. We're using Google Sheets to actually plan out some of these things for our content for this year. So those are things that we're doing at the moment. We're using Restream to actually plan these out. I actually so yeah, and we're sort of focusing here on planning content specifically. So I guess really it is predominantly about the Google Drive and the docs and the sheets for us. But I know Sam often does things with Trello, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, Sam.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is I also do use primarily the Google suite of tools, the doc and the sheets. I do also use Trello and Slack. I use Slack a lot less right now. I was using it when I was doing a lot more weird news stuff. That was more of our sort of in-house virtual office of like communicating and sharing files between producers and writers and actors and voice actors and things like that. Trello I use in a couple different ways. It's basically my go-to to-do list. Just create a card. It basically replaces having sticky notes. Just anything that I would have written on here, I just create a card in my to-do list Trello, either for Sam Proof or the Kitten Cam's Trello. I have a sales funnel for potential brand deals for the Kitten Cam. So if there is a cat food company that has reached out to us, I have that becomes a card, and I have that as a workflow. So it's either a cold lead, a warm lead, something that needs to be followed up on, things like that. And I have another Trello for, there's a game that I've been programming on my chat, so that all of those kind of updates are there as well, which is just yet another to-do list kind of thing.
Nice. And Adobe Under Five asked if Sam has a YouTube channel. Sure enough, he does. Just Sam Proof, which
Yeah.
you can do with the slash Sam Proof or slash at Sam Proof, because we have both of those features within YouTube these days.
Yeah.
So that's certainly there. Adobe Under Five, and I'm assuming that there are some Adobe tutorials on your channel, but we'd love to hear a little bit more about that. So and Adobe Under Five writes that they've been using Trello with clients. So that's, I guess there are all kinds of productivity tools, and especially in the new year, people are like, new year, new me. I'm going to get so organized. But I guess my recommendation for trying new tools generally is just make sure you have a really compelling reason before you jump away from the thing that you know how to use really intimately.
Yeah.
I kind of my feeling is for the most part, it doesn't matter what video editing software you use, or WordPress page builder, any of these things. The thing that you want to think about is which one do you know intimately, which one can you build with fluently,
Yeah.
and it's and there's so much FOMO these days. It's so tempting to get swept up in the shiny new thing every single time. So, I guess I'd be a little bit careful about that. But certainly, there are some people that just love trying out those things, and if that's you, then by all means have at it. So yeah, do whatever you want to do and whatever makes sense for you. But again, I think there's so much to be said for really getting to know a piece of software rather
Yeah.
intimately and just stick with it unless you have a really compelling reason to change.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with that. I recently moved on from my job where I had Adobe licenses for Premiere and Photoshop, so I no longer have those unless I want to start paying for it myself. And I went to play with some of the freely available software like DaVinci and some other things. Talked about CapCut and on the graphic side, GIMP and Cyber Studio, whatever it's called. And oh my God, I was like, this is just they might as well have written this in another language. I can't believe how much I struggle with trying to do this. And I'm like, I could do this in Photoshop in 3 seconds. It's taken me 5 minutes so far, and I'm still not where I want to be.
And again, like everything comes with a learning curve, and that's fine. And I think we
Yeah,
need to keep telling ourselves that, because especially come January of a new year, people are so optimistic about everything, and the truth is, it's going to it's going to take time to learn new pieces of software. It's funny because I actually do have a lot of the Adobe software on this computer, and I kind of don't use it because I don't want to become too dependent on it, because
sure.
unless you're a very serious professional, a creative professional, the Adobe subscription price is kind of mind-boggling, and
It's
we
it's a
do
lot.
it really is. And like every time I see something that proposes to be a an alternative to some of those things, I think, yeah, I'm going to check it out. But again, like I guess the other thing too is we've also never lived in a time where you have access to more information. And on the one hand, that can be really overwhelming. But on the other, if you know specifically what you're looking for, it can be so easy to find.
Yeah.
And, people, I'm going to play the old man card again, Sam. I'm sorry. People don't realize this, but, when I was a kid, if I needed to know something, I'd have to go to the library and see
Yeah.
if they had it. And if I needed to know that at 8 o'clock that night and the library wasn't open, I'd have to wait for the next day, and maybe they'd have it, maybe they wouldn't,
Yeah.
maybe I'd have to go to a
Yeah.
bookstore. The young folk, and I'm trying not to be grumpy, but you have no idea how good it is to be able to just search for something and look it up, or look at a YouTube video. There are all kinds of things that are out there. So again, keep in mind that you will have a learning curve for any new software, but again, keep in mind
Yeah.
that you do have all kinds of resources to help you bridge that gap a little bit.
No.
So again, Adobe under 5. I'm often at the mercy of what the client mandates for software. Yes, that's a big
Hmm.
one. So, um, and it's funny because if you know people need to have access to the software. They need to be comfortable using the software. Especially if you're working with a lot of different people, you really do need to think about what they're using and what you're using, and where those two things intersect. Absolutely.
But if they're
Oh,
using Microsoft Meet, just get a new go find someone else. Anyway, or Teams. I think it's called
Teams.
Teams.
I was going to correct you
That's right.
actually. Yeah,
That's right.
and
Thank
it's
you.
funny. I use Teams day in day out for my
I
day
can't. I
job, and
couldn't
I don't.
couldn't
To be
stand
honest,
it.
I don't hate it. I'm okay
Yeah.
with it. Although I must admit, I'm not a people person at the best of times, and I've set up a lot of boundaries. I'm like, just don't, dear stranger, don't randomly ring me. I'm not talking to you about that. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
whole other show.
Yeah.
Um, And again, like this is a great point. So charge the client for the software
Hmm.
subscription. It's always smart to consider that when pricing client work. So
For
again,
sure.
if that is the case, I'm not really doing any client work these days. I do have a full time job
Yep.
elsewhere, but that's a great consideration. You want to think about the costs. Again, I think in some ways we probably appeal to a lot of beginning content creators, and again, without meaning to play the grumpy old man tool, you have no idea how good the open source and free offerings are these days.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, you can do things with your phone. You can do things with your computer. Sam alluded to GIMP as a piece of graphic software. There's all kinds of options, and in some ways that is both empowering, but it's also overwhelming. So just start with something. Try and master the basics of that, and then you can always change to something else later on. So keep that in mind. All right. So again, if you've got specific things you'd like us to address in future episodes, please let us know in the chat or leave comments wherever you see the recording. Um, we are sort of coming up to the hour. So Sam, where can people learn more about you and what's your content?
Sure, you can find me at Sam Proof on just about any platform, but specifically go to samproof.tv and thank John for helping me set up my new website. And you'll find all my links there.
Absolutely. And again, if you want to check out what anything I'm doing, you can head over to johnlacey.com. So we've had a great amount of conversation in the chat. So thank you everybody for that. That's really lovely when we have that feedback from you. So have a think about what you want to do in 2023. It's going to be a long year, so you might as well be strategic. You might as well do a bit of planning and think about how you want to work with that energy moving forward. But have a great day. Enjoy your weekend. And again, we'll be back the same time next week to talk about another exciting topic. We haven't quite put that on our content calendar just yet, but we'll decide on that once we finish, and we'll let you know and set up those events shortly.
Yeah, watch our socials for that announcement.
Absolutely. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. And again, thank you for the conversation in the chat. We'll talk to you again soon.
Take care.